What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to D-Dub channel. It's been a little bit and I finally returned. Today we just saw the Xbox One. Not even the Xbox One. What is the Xbox anymore? It was the Xbox Series X game presentation brought to us by Jeff Keighley. This was the stuff that we would have saw, if E3 had actually happened. And obviously that wasn't the case. E3 had been canceled due to COVID, and I saw quite a few people saying that Xbox, their presentation as well, was affected by COVID, and how their presentation was much worse than PlayStation's, which today we're not really talking about PlayStation, but I would say in terms of their marketing so far and what they've shown us for their games, at least for their game presentation, which was a couple weeks back, showing off the console, showing a whole bunch of different exclusives, third party, just what the system can do. That whole presentation, I would probably have given that an 8 out of 10, whereas with this Xbox presentation, maybe somewhere between I don't even want to go from just 7 to 8 or 7.5. I would probably give it like a 7.3, maybe a 7.6, something kind of odd like that. But anyways, for today's discussion, we're talking about exactly what that presentation was. And it's kind of strange with this whole year, the way that 2020's been. Really weird for Xbox as well, and Sony alike. Thank God. I'm sure Nintendo, they're probably the ones out of this going, man, good thing the Wii U flopped. And this year we can just kind of put out games, we can sit back, we can silently delay stuff, push stuff, not do directs, show what we can, get to the holiday, and then hopefully just move on next year without having to finish up a console and then market it and get the thing produced and out there. So luckily for Nintendo, that's not the case for them. Unfortunately for Xbox and for Microsoft, they're both in the middle of trying to finish up this last bit of this year and this generation going into the next, which for PS5 seems to be just a more defined line, like it seems with PlayStation. They've stuck to the tried and true. Same for Nintendo, where it's the next generation, it's a new system, they just market this new system. Xbox, on the other hand, as you've probably seen by the thumbnail for this video, they're pretty much dead to me. Xbox 360, the way they marketed that console, super exciting, super fun to play, especially in those days before YouTube was really huge. The online thing was just starting to really pick up steam. Online games were just starting to really become a mainstream kind of thing. Playing Halo, playing Gears, all those types of games online, those were always fun. And while it's not a Japanese type of console, they had several decent good games for the Xbox 360, and I always appreciated that. When it comes to the Xbox Series X, there seems to be a less defined line in the sand, so to speak. The Xbox Series X is basically just the Xbox One 1.5, or I guess the Xbox One 2, as some people had previously called it. But now we've actually seen the thing. We know what the thing is. And what is it? To me, it's just basically another boring black box that looks like a PC tower, which, kind of cool. It's really not about the box, it's about what it does. I don't know, I think kind of the way that Sony and Microsoft have kind of shown their consoles, I think what they should have done is not shown any games. You showed the console off first. If they had just shown the tower and not showed any games, would it build more hype? Would it build more hype to not give a release date, not give pricing, be waiting it out in the middle of this, social pandemic thing going on, and then basically just showing games? Because from what I've seen from that presentation, we had 22 console exclusives, all going to be available on Game Pass day one. That's cool, that's exciting. But out of the number of games that I saw, I honestly wasn't really interested in many of them. A lot of them I can't really remember the names for. I guess it's easy to say they all kind of look the same, they all kind of have the same color palette. Definitely not the case. There was that Psychonauts 2 with Jack Black singing, very cartoony, very good trailer, had an epic song. Jables, of course, Tenacious D, he was singing on it. That was cool. The game looks cool because it's a 3D platformer, and those, for the most part, aren't in the limelight anymore. Now it's all about these giant open world type of adventure, action, RPG, or first-person shooter, open world adventure storyline. Anyways, the Xbox presentation, which I'm not really going to be boring you probably with a lot of the trailers and gameplay here. You kind of already saw it, but really the most exciting thing was Halo. And from what I was hoping, and based on the box art the other day, I was really hoping that they would take a step back, make this game feel like, Halo of old, Halo 1, 2, and 3, and not so much, I guess maybe even like 4, but not so much 5. We did get to see quite a bit of gameplay, and it feels like this whole presentation was basically based around the Halo gameplay, which they actually showed quite a bit of gameplay. We saw him riding around the vehicles. We saw him, jumping around. We saw the map. We saw the UI. We got to see a little bit of that grappling hook kind of thing. So far, so good. But, I mean, let's face it, 20 years in, 2 decades in, and what does Xbox have to show for themselves? I mean, really, they're pushing this game service thing, which I guess is fine. Really, they're trying to dip into everybody's pocket throughout all sectors of gaming. So really, I think they're having kind of a bit of trouble actually trying to grab the console market by the balls and corner that. It seems like they can't do that. They did it with the Xbox 360, that's for sure. But in this different world we're living in, what they want to sell you is the console, and they want you to basically play all the first party big game exclusives that come day one on Game Pass with your Xbox Live Gold Ultimate Game Pass combo, seemingly, which is what it's going to be now that they're starting to take away like the Xbox Live Gold. They're going to do a different subscription model and kind of make you pay for it. But at the end of a 5-year cycle, I mean, what do you get? You really have a bunch of games that you rented that you will hopefully be able to play on your next console. So I guess for most casual gamer, I guess maybe that comes in a little bit better for them, paying like $400 or $500 for the console and then just paying for the service and playing kind of whenever you want. Say you have a 6-month period, you don't play at all. You don't have to pay for these games and then have them sitting on your shelf. But at the end of it, you don't really get much. So like I said, they're not really trying to corner the console. They're now available on PC and on your phone or on your tablet. Even coming into the next 5 years, we're probably going to be seeing these games built into TVs, coming with controllers, other Bluetooth wireless dongles that'll hook up to any type of tablet or smartphone, computer, TV. These next 5 years of tech and integrating these consoles and these cloud, not even the console, but these cloud services into different devices, into different TVs, into your regular standard PC, into your smartphone, into your tablet, into your iPhone, when it comes to us console gamers. And I think this whole Xbox presentation was kind of just a bit of a drag. I think they should have tightened it up to maybe a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. They showed plenty of gameplay from different stuff. We didn't really get to see enough of like Forza, which who really needs to see that, right? I mean, it looked incredible. It was what it was. Halo looked good. The rumored Fable is coming, which it's just a name at this point. That series has been dead for so long. It's going to be hard to get new people into the series. So I really feel that that's a game. It only had a 30-second trailer, which just basically boiled down to a logo, which is no good way to market any type of game. They should have showed nothing and maybe put a tweet out about it and then waited to actually do a trailer. But a 30-second trailer with just the logo is pointless, and I think they were trying to pull like a Nintendo Direct kind of on their part. Obviously, saying it's in development doesn't get the same type of energy. It doesn't get the same type of attention as like a Breath of the Wild 2 in a Nintendo Direct would. That's just not the case. That's not how it happens, not for Xbox. I would say now, even going into the States, because the way that I'm seeing this play out is basically there's not a real fine line. Like I said, it's kind of like an Xbox One 1.5. So these services are now going to be available more so on your PC. You don't even have to own an Xbox to be playing Halo, which really is probably one of the only games that I'm super excited about. That'll be a game that I spend, the $15 or the $20, whatever it is, Xbox Live, Game Pass on my PC, play the game for a bit, and then that's pretty much it. But I mean, let's talk about this here. Microsoft and Xbox are 2 decades into game manufacturing. They've been working on the Xbox since what? 1998, 1999 behind the scenes. I think it came out in 2001, and they're 20 years in with how many franchises under their belt? I mean, just Crackdown. I guess the first one was pretty successful. Second one, a little bit. The third one took 5 years to come out, and in the end was kind of just a mid-tier type of game on Game Pass that no one really gave a shit about. Does that count as a franchise that's under their belt? Maybe. Okay, so I mean, what do they have? They have Halo, and they have Gears of War. I mean, what else, honestly, do they have? Xbox 360 was super exciting. Xbox One, not as exciting, more of a play when you want, gets kind of dusty kind of console. It's a third-party powerhouse. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to exclusives, you want the PlayStation or you want the Nintendo. So if you go with Nintendo, you know what you're getting. But okay, let's do this scenario here. Imagine that the year is like 2006 or 7, right around the time that the Wii came out. And Nintendo is on their 4th, 5th console, just like normal. But imagine that they're Xbox and they only have like 2 or 3 real universes, characters, franchises under their belt. So imagine the Wii just comes out and all you get is Zelda and Mario. And then Metroid Other M. That's their big number 3 franchise. And that's really all they have, and that they've been struggling for the past years. And had made a Kirby game, then left that franchise to die. And they made a Donkey Kong game, and they let that franchise just kind of disappear for 8 or 12 years at a time. And they also made, like, say, Pikmin, and then they just kind of let that fizzle out, or it didn't get a 9 on reviews. It got like a 78 and was a decent game, but in today's era, if it's not a 9, if it's not being hailed as a masterpiece, with there being so many other games, so many other services, and lack of time, the game just gets swept away and the franchise just kind of dies off. I think that's part of what Xbox problem is here. But okay, so imagine it's 2015 and Sony with their PlayStation 4, imagine it's the same for them, and they're just PlayStation 4 systems in, and they only have 2 or 3 franchises that are really anything notable. Like they had Horizon, Zero Dawn, and then they had, you know, I guess Crash Bandicoot still maybe under their name, and maybe a Metal Gear Solid game, and really that was it. And everything else was stuff from 7, 8, 3, 11 years ago that they made was good, people still want, and they just never made another one. They just kind of left it to die. That seems to be the problem with Xbox. And basically my prediction here going forward is that the Xbox Series X is kind of going to be the Wii U as it was to the Wii, where there's not a fine enough line in the console generation. A lot of people are going to get on board with the Series X, but a lot of people are just going to keep their Xbox One S or their Xbox One SAD, all digital edition, or their Xbox One X, and be able to do Game Pass and play these games or play them on their PC. And there's just a few games here and there where it's like, okay, I'll check it out. And at that point, it's almost becoming like, I guess, kind of Sega was in the late 90s, where everybody was kind of buying some of the systems, kind of waiting to see what would come out, seeing what franchises would, you know, come back into the fold, and kind of just waiting to see before really placing their money down. I feel like the Xbox Series X is kind of going on that path of being the next Wii U, where there's just not a clear enough, fine enough definition of a line in the sand for the next gen. And okay, so we were watching this whole presentation, and you got to imagine that these games are probably going to look better in person than they do over a live stream off of somebody else streaming it. Pretty much a given, but I think what people are missing out based on the comments in the streams and watching this presentation, I bounced around from probably 8 different streams, seeing what people were saying, seeing what people were thinking, what they're feeling, watching the Sony Xbox wars go on at the end of the presentation. You know, people are like Xbox One, Sony 0. So you can see where people lie. You can see what people are at least thinking, though. And even if it's like toxic fan, but you can still see what the general gauge is of interest and kind of how people are feeling on the topic, especially at the end of the presentation after seeing the whole hour, which, like I said, I feel like they could have crammed down. I think they could have made it a little bit better, made it flow a little bit better. But so gauging that, it seems like a lot of people aren't really that interested. They're not blown away by next-gen graphics. And while a lot of gamers, including myself, I don't really care about graphics. That much can be shown on the Switch. They can make another system that's just the Switch 2 and really looks no better than PS3, even though it does slightly depending the games because they're built from the ground up, say like something like Paper Mario or Breath of the Wild 2. Even though it's basically using older hardware, it's hardware that's been spec'd to a T and then built from the ground up with these engines and being kind of like pushed to their max. So something like Breath of the Wild 2, if it was made 10 years ago looking on the PS3 versus being on an underpowered or sort of equivalent, I guess you could say, to the Switch now, the games still look great, but sure, they're not 4K and 120 FPS like all these like all the new systems, all these new games are trying to promise, even though that probably won't be the case because we're still seeing Deadly Premonition 2 come out and running at like 9 frames a second. So 30 or 60 or 120 has never been a standard, has never been locked down. It always depends the developer. It always depends the genre of game, what type it is. In a lot of cases, it doesn't seem to matter, and they go for 30, and it ends up being under that anyways, and that can go for anything from a detective type racing LA noir type of game to like a Crash Bandicoot platformer to just a cell shaded kind of Fortnite shooter or even just a strategy game. But I really think to get the full experience, you're going to need to see it in person with one of the best TVs. And I think we're at a point where tech just keeps coming out so much that people are slowly adopting 4K TVs. I don't have a 4K TV. 1080 is pretty much good enough for me, and maybe I'd be convinced to pony up the dough if I were to, I guess, visit a friend, which I don't really have any, but if I were to see like a demo unit where it's using like a 4K OLED screen and it says, you know, Xbox Series X, this is Halo, running in HDR, like you need this specific stuff to make it work. You know it's going to cost a lot, but here's basically the bottom line. You can spend several $100s along with the console to get a great TV and see this game running in 4K or maybe even above that. Maybe if I was to see that, maybe I would actually be blown away. And I think that's going to need to be the case for a lot of people to basically jump on board with the Series X. Sure, there's a lot of YouTubers, there's a lot of Twitchers, a lot of streamers, a lot of gamers that are going to be buying this thing as soon as they can get their hands on it. No contest, and it's just for the sheer fact that that's the life that they're living. Anyways, I guess if I had the spare cash laying around and I was to be wanting to throw it at those, yeah, I would definitely get those day one. I would get a better TV just to experience this at the maximum fidelity possible, but I don't think that's going to be the case for a lot of people. Plenty of people are just happy with their Switch, and they're happy with the amount of different games that there are, and a lot of people weren't really thrilled by this Xbox presentation, me included. I definitely like Halo. I like Gears of War. I didn't play Gears 5. Well, I played like the opening tutorial, but it's just not that exciting anymore. It's kind of just a rinse and repeat. Even the new Halo, it'll come out, it'll be good, it'll be grand, it'll be great, it'll review great, it'll be the throwback to Halo 1 and 2, hopefully giving you that more open world feeling as it did on the original Xbox back in like 2002 when we all first played those games and how great they were. We're waiting for Fable, which could be a 2022 title, and we don't even know what type of game that's going to be. We're waiting for like Perfect Dark. Like, where are the other rare games that used to be on Nintendo that should now be on Xbox that just aren't? People are waiting for new Banjo, which I personally don't even want because I honestly think that they would ruin that title. They would put out another game a la this masterpiece, and it would just be another weird sidestep for the franchise that keeps the name going but does nothing for it, does no favors to it, does nothing to really keep it alive. And then ultimately Xbox just has one more game that was okay, and then it would kind of just go out, it might get a 7.5 review and really then just do nothing for the franchise. And then what, that's it for Banjo and Kazooie until, you know, 6 or 7 or 8 or 11 or 12 more years when Xbox decides to do it. So I really think they're at kind of a crucial point, which sure, it's Microsoft. They can spend money for the rest of forever, and sure, they're making money, and they can continue to do that with the subscription model that they're offering, and it's going to work for them. But I guess it's just a weird time to see Nintendo kind of behind a generation, but killing it. They absolutely can't make enough consoles to satisfy demand. Same, I guess, will probably be the case for Xbox and Sony, at least for the first year, while people are trying to get their hands on it, figuring out COVID, all of the manufacturing and shipping BS that's going on, that will continue to more than likely go on with that as everybody tries to figure this thing out. But then I'm curious to see exactly how this whole thing's going to play out. I think it's, once again, PS5 is going to be a huge success. People are going to buy it. There's going to be plenty enough games to satiate, you know, everybody's hunger, as well as being plenty of third-party games on that. Whereas I think Xbox is going to kind of struggle. Sure, it's going to be the most powerful console ever made by man, but that's only going to matter to a select few. And I know for me, that doesn't really matter. It's about the games, and Xbox just doesn't do it for me for the games and for the playability of the system, the fun of it, the marketing, the feel of it, the heads. I mean, when it comes to like Phil Spencer, and then I see Jeff Keighley. Sure, Jeff Keighley, he bounces between the big three, but I see him tied to just Xbox and Sony so strongly. But then you see Phil Spencer, he does a good job for Xbox, but I just think overall the Xbox is just another black box that sure is the most powerful console in the world. Plays great, plays all third-party games great, but I just don't think Phil Spencer does a great job as being the head of it. In terms of like marketing, I just don't think they're marketing this thing as fun. It just doesn't come across as fun. It comes across as an adult PC tower that is a third-party beast with a great subscription model that you don't really own anything, with some exclusives thrown in here and there, and hey, we're trying. And for those that don't believe, which is pretty much myself, I mean, 20 years in, guys, this is Xbox. They've been around for long enough. They've had plenty more experience than than Sega. Sega had bowed out before they had 20 years. They're almost to the point of where Sega had just about as many years as them. And sure, Sega's still a third-party publisher, but think of all the IPs that they just let die, that they've never resurrected, that they still have a chance to, but just refuse to. They'd rather put out another subpar 3D Sonic game. So I think when it comes down to it, guys, if you weren't impressed by this presentation, it's Xbox. They're 20 years in, and this is the best that they can do. I mean, this is the best that their marketing is, and for me personally, I think in my heart what I feel is that it's just Xbox. It's just, like I said, another big black PC tower box, and it's really just not that fun or exciting. Those were pretty much my thoughts on the Xbox One Series X game announcement presentation thing. They need to come up, I think, with a better name for that, because I can't even, I'm kind of just making the name up. Sure, it had probably a better name. Anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know what you guys thought of the presentation. Me, I was not too thoroughly impressed. Looking forward to Halo. That's about it. Kind of waste of an hour. They should have made it a half hour. But anyways, guys, my name's D-Dub. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Hit the like button. Thanks for watching. Like I said, let me know what's the game you're most excited for. Sure, maybe once the thing is out, Game Pass and all that, maybe I'll try some more of these games that were shown here today. Maybe it'll be better than I thought, but for the time being, I'm just really not that excited. I really don't care about much other than Halo, and, you know, still a little bit of time, so I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. I wasn't really too impressed, but let me know what your guys' thoughts are. And this has been D-Dub signing out, saying, you know, take it easy, and hopefully you have a good day, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.